Hey YouTube, this is diveflyfish. I just want to show you something. This is that pyrolytic graphite material that I ordered. It's a bit pricey for a relatively small size sheet, but in any event, this is going to be somewhat of an acid test. Here we have, a piece of the magnesium that I've pre-treated, and the pyrolytic graphite, if you place it in a pile cell, a number of these little things put together with just having the dry electrolyte, we have with no water, it produces just about a volt with about 4 of these layers. Extraordinarily nominal current, however. So, in any event, this will be a very, very good way for us to test the deterioration of the magnesium. If I place just a very small drop of water here, like such, on that dry oxide layer, and if I take a piece of the pyrolytic graphite like so and apply it to that layer, excuse me, thusly, I'll show you what it's doing from a volt standpoint. Okay, so here we have 1.7 volts, okay? And if we change it over to the current level, to microamps, I'll show you. Let me see if I can hold my hand a little bit more steady here. 148, 150, 160 microamps, okay? So if nothing else, if I make a pile cell with this and just periodically add small bits of hydration, I am quite confident that with the ease of disassembly, without having any sort of messy electrolyte, in this cell I'm not going to polarize because the electrolyte's already been polarized, we'll be able to very easily ascertain if there's any type of magnesium deterioration that's going on. But suffice to say, with this material, it's incredibly conductive. It's very, very thin. So by stacking the pieces thusly, you can make a very, very decent pile cell. And that's untreated, treated, and simply pile these layers together like so. And again, when they're perfectly bone dry, it still produces a voltage. Not so much current, but it definitely does produce a voltage when you just lay the dry pieces together like so. And then continue as such. So that will be a very, very small, very, very thin pile cell. And it'll be interesting to see what type of current it'll produce and what type of voltage it'll produce, dry and wet. So that will be the subject of the next video. But suffice to say again, with just a small aliquot of water, we're able to get a decent bit of current out of this. And again, the substantivity of the water will obviously limit the overall current draw that you're capable of getting out of these cells. But if nothing else, I'm very encouraged. This material is terrific, albeit pricey, but it's very neat to work with. It's relatively tough, very pliable, very flexible, and it has, I think, a tremendous potential for making cells, assembling them into a very interesting configuration. So for what it's worth, again, this will be the pile cell, and I'm assuming if each layer produces 1.7 volts with a small modicum of water, you may not need more than 1 or 2 cells to have the the oscillator circuits work very well, or you could have excuse me, a multiplicity of these small dry cells with no water, and hopefully we can get the oscillator to work with just the ambient imbibing of the water. But this is where I'm going on the next step until I start hitting the kiln, but trying just the dried electrochemically deposited electrolyte with the thin graphene sheets as a pile cell to see if we can produce a usable current and voltage for the oscillator. So there is where we are. Have a great day. Hey guys, this is sort of cool. That's a little cell that I just built with the graphene, and for the first time my oscillator actually blinks. Watch this. I just put that tiny drop of water there and I just tried the oscillator circuit with it. And by golly, look at that. There she goes, blinking like a penny instead of being totally on. So I think that's really, really nifty. So for what it's worth, again, I think this type of material in cell production has a tremendous amount of potential. But I'm just tickled pink because I've never seen my penny blink. It's always been on. So for what it's worth, just the thin graphene sheet and a tiny drop of water, and there she goes. Blinking. A blinking penny. I've got a blinking penny, by golly. So have a great day, and more experiments will be following with the pile cell. But again, this is just one cell. She's blinking pretty good. Have a great night. Okay, YouTube, again, this is just the small magnesium crystal cells that I wanted to show you up close. I have a little accessory lens that I just threw on my camera. I'm holding it there in position, but you can see the glistening of those crystals. Okay? And that cell is dry as can be, because those crystals, the zinc oxide, go away very quickly if you get it wet. Again, as you can see here, the glistening goes completely circumferentially around that cell. And some of those rods are really long. They're just like little spikes. Sorry if I'm shaking, had some coffee this morning. But there's some of the ribbon type zinc oxide cells. Some of them are the long spicules, some of them are the ribbons. I just find it absolutely fascinating, the different types. You can see the glisten right there, and there's a spike coming up on the left hand side, coming around here, sort of sticking up. I don't know if you can make it out. Sticking out over here. Try to see if you can focus in on that against the white background, but that is the manganese zinc oxide and silica gel electrolyte. And again, it's producing around 500 microamps, 500 microamps, 1.6 volts. So again, no water addition here. Just thought you might find it sort of neat to see the close-up on that cell and some of the crystals that are forming there. And that's one I just showed you on the film. Anyway, I just want to show you one other thing. This little lens I purchased from Electronic Gold Mine for like $1. Anyway, I just put it on the orifice of my iPhone for a macro lens, and it seems to work pretty well. So in any event, that's how I got that up-close shot, because if I try to take the shot with the normal camera lens, I guess it allows me to get sort of close, but not quite as close. So nothing else. There is the cell using just the standard iPhone capacity for focusing in on detail. The other one's just slightly better. Ah, there you go. You see that little long spike that's the flash? That's one it's one zinc oxide crystal. It's over a centimeter long. And again, it's neat stuff. I'll tell you, it's not the easiest thing in the world to replicate, making these crystals come out like that too. And I do believe that it has to do with the size of the particulate matter of the silica gel, as well as the length, duration, and intensity of the polarization phase. So, for what it's worth, I want to create more cells like this, but it's not easy. And I think that might be akin to what John Bedini was saying, is like some of these cells, they're not easy to make because some of them work better than others. And this one seems to work particularly well. It also has the most diverse forms of crystals. Some of them will form crystals, but they're a lot smaller. But this is a huge smattering of different crystalline structures. So fascinating stuff. So anyway, that's just a magnesium cylinder that I milled. Have a little spot for the negative electrode, graphite electrode. Alright. Have a great night. Amps. Again, this is the one that had the really interesting crystals, zinc oxide crystals percolating out that I put on energetic form of those photographs. You can see the glistening of the crystals right there. And again, no water's been added to the cell. It's been dry for a long time now, and no addition to water. But here we'll put in the electrodes, and you'll see, now watch, it goes down, and then she starts to rise. So we'll see what it shows in just a second. So I'm just going to hold it here steady as it can. Now you're going to see her rise. And again, this is a dry cell. Those zinc oxide crystals are my proof to show that I'm not adding any water to the cell, because if I do, they go away instantaneously. So this is a cell that I'm just leaving be, and the only interface for any type of exchange of air, for that matter, is just about an 1/8 of an inch gap circumferentially in between the carbon electrode and the magnesium. So again, this is not a cell I'm going to hydrate at all. This is my attempt number 1 for a cell with 0 water addition. And I do believe that it will maintain, a microamperage that would be utilizable for one of the Joule circuit type scenarios. And if we could make it a slightly larger cell with a larger surface area, without a doubt we could increase the current levels. So that's a work in process, as it were. But again, I'm just sort of showing the fact that the current level does continue to rise, and it takes a bit of time. But yesterday when I did this, it hit around 500 and some microamps or so thereabouts. I won't bore you with that, but suffice to say, the current level does continue with this. It continues to climb, albeit at a pace just like what you're seeing now. And I find it encouraging that we can do that and still draw some current from it, and it bounces back. It's approximately 1.6 volts, so it's not a super powerful battery like some of my other cells have been as far as the voltage, but it does provide at least 1.6 volts, and she's climbing. Now it's at 300 microamps almost. But it's interesting. It pauses and then it goes, and pauses and then it goes, which I find sort of fascinating unto itself. But in any event, that's what that one is. And again, I won't bore you to have you watch it continue to rise, because it takes a little bit of time for it to get to 500, but it will. So anyway, for what it's worth, that is the manganese zinc oxide cell with the crystals that you can see there reflecting in the light. And that is no water addition at all. Alright. See, I shorted that out. Must have did that with my hand. Oh, I'm going to show you something else that's sort of interesting too, just from the standpoint of how sensitive this is to pressure. I forgot to show you that. So this is just a ceramic crucible, so it doesn't have any appreciable conductive property. That's why I'm going to use this. But watch, if I place this on top of the electrode and just press with a little bit of vigor, watch this. I'm just basically holding it there, just so it doesn't fall. And you can see the current climbs quite nicely. As a matter of fact, climbs quite quickly. So, and I'm going to press now. I'm going to push down a little bit firmer. Oops, there you go. You can see she climbs over 500 if you press, and you let go, and it'll definitely come down. So, for what it's worth, the effect of that is rather interesting. And again, just dry as a bone crystals. So, for what it's worth, have a great night.